Hebrew is a very beautiful and interesting language. And there's a word in Hebrew that fascinates me. It's the word yir'ah, which can be translated as fear or as awe or as anything in between. And it's also related to the word lir'ot, which means to see. So I think, based on my life experience and what's happened for me, is that whether I view something as with fear or via awe has a lot to do with my perspective, with the way that I am seeing it. One of the difficulties that we have as tour guides in Israel is getting people to the country. People are afraid to come to Israel. That's their perspective. It's fomented by the press. It's fomented by a lot of people who don't want the people to get here and connect to the land and be inspired and the wow, the awe of the country. But even once people get here, we have trouble getting them into Yudav Shomron, into Judea and Samaria. They're afraid, the roads, the rocks, etc. Once people do get here, though, it is absolutely life-changing. And so we all need in our personal lives, in our national lives as well, but also in our personal lives, to decide where we can safely expand our comfort zone. Because when you fall into fear, not only do you end up having a worse life, on a larger level, among the people who are trying to sow that fear, you give them a victory. So there are victories every single day to fear all over the planet. Every time someone has to go into an airport and take off their shoes, they're giving in to terrorism, because that's what travel now is. But there are ways that we don't have to give in to that in our own personal lives. And really, when we look at things realistically, there are people who say, oh, I'm not going to Judea and Samaria, and then they light up their 30th cigarette of the day and get into their car without a seatbelt. And so there are a lot of tweaking that all of us need to do and realize that some of the things we're afraid of, we needn't to be afraid of. Now, on a national level or a collective level, the ramifications aren't just about us. The more good people travel in Judea and Samaria, the more people go to Shiloh and understand what the Mishkan was, or stand on Har Bracha, stand on Mount Gerizim, and listen to the traffic down in Shechem, and then open their Bible and read about where the blessings and curses were given, and I don't think they had microphones in those days, and understand that still today, the sound reverberates just as it did over 3,000 years ago, and drink the wine and eat the food and meet the people and buy a little bowl of ceramics that was made in these hills and take it home and understand that this is awesome and not a place to be afraid of. Now, a few years ago, I was about to turn 55, and there were things that were going on in my personal life, things I realized that I was still afraid of, and I was getting a little old to be afraid of them. You know, when I grew up in America, I've been here almost 30 years, 55 is the speed limit. But I realized as I was about to turn 55 that what I wanted to do was step on the gas. So I decided there were things that I had to get rid of once and for all. There were certain people in my life who were toxic to me, and I had to figure out how to behave with them. So what did I do? I went to Costa Rica. I went to Costa Rica with a women's jeeping trip, all Israeli women, none of whom I knew, and none of them knew me. I got to the airport, and I met them all for the first time. Now, since the world that I work in here in Israel is more of the English-speaking world, both the radio show that I've been doing once a week for many, many years is in English, I guide in English, so none of these women had any idea who I was. It was a mixed group, religious and not religious women, all kinds of women. I wanted to see if I could make friends with people the way I am now, without any kind of context. They had no idea anything about me. So we went to Costa Rica, and it was a life-changing week for me. First of all, I did make friends, and I had a wonderful time. But there were some moments that were incredibly difficult for me. But there were also places there where I met Hashem, where I realized that although, as we say, here he's a local call, he's everywhere. So sitting on the beach in Costa Rica and watching the Pacific Ocean, and I'm from Los Angeles, so I'm familiar with the Pacific Ocean, and realizing that I was watching a tremendous amount of energy, yet it was making me calm. And it's that kind of spectrum of the tension of life, of being nervous about things, of all that energy, but also needing to find, as Elijah the prophet found, the small, still voice. And there on the beach in Costa Rica, I had a tremendous sense of calm, that Hashem has it in control. A lot of us, the reason that we're afraid of things is because we feel helpless. We feel that things are out of our control. We can't affect anything. And I realized that he's got it. I realized at once how tremendously insignificant I am when it comes to the scheme of things, and how incredibly important I am to the scheme of things. And I don't know what the journey is going to be. I hope that I have the skills, the faith, to be able to cope with whatever he decides to give me. But I also know that in the end, the world, the way we envision it, a world of peace, a world of harmony and coexistence and understanding, is going to happen because he's going to make sure that it happens. And I had to really take not just a leap of faith, but put myself once again in his hands and realize it's all going to be okay. We went into the rainforest where I finally understood Jerusalem syndrome. You know, there's something that happens to some people when they get to Israel. Very few, but still, at any given time, there's maybe 10 or 12 people in the mental hospital in Jerusalem who think they're Jesus, Queen Esther, King David, because the overwhelming spirituality of the land tipped them over into some kind of psychotic break, and then they have to be healed. So in the rainforest, in Costa Rica, I'm suddenly faced with more shades of green than I ever imagined existed. And for the first time, I understood how somebody could be in a zone where they can't really comprehend what it is they're experiencing. So it's made me a better guide in terms of that. But there I also realized I was able to expand my comfort zone. I was able to understand. I felt like I'd fallen to the third day of creation. And finally, I understood what nature was, what the world was, how people tend to mess it up, but how incredible this world is. And I was filled with a sense of awe and appreciation that I can be a part of it. From the minute we wake up in the morning and say, Modeh Ani, thank you for giving me my breath back. We need every single day on an individual level to be appreciative and grateful for what we have, to be filled with that sense of awe and not with the fear of the unknown or of the things that we can't control. This is an issue that anybody living in the world today, but those of us, I think, especially living in Israel, where there's such tension like this all the time, we have to find that place. We have to find that place where we're not afraid, where we, to some degree, relinquish that control of the fear and focus instead on the awe. There's a lot of things that we can't change. It doesn't matter how upset I am that Iran might go nuclear or North Korea already did. There's nothing I can do about that. But there are things that I can do something about. I can take people more around Israel more, definitely around Yudav Shomron more, and show them their roots, whether they're Jews or they're Christians, to show them the glory of this place, the miracle of the fact that we can drive around Judea and Samaria. 50 years ago, before the Six-Day War, we wouldn't have been able to do that. I think that was a miracle that changed the world. The whole Woodstock, tree hugging, granola eating happens after June of 1967. I think that outrageous level of an open miracle that nobody expected actually shifted something in the entire world. If you change your perspective, if you start looking at the things that are awesome and not awful, if you stop being afraid, if you stop getting in your own way on the things that you want to accomplish in your life, that is something that is in your control. That most definitely is. About 15 years ago, when there was really, there was a lot of terrorism going on here, the Gavish family was killed in Elon Moreh, Pesach. I think it was about 15 years ago. And I wanted to pay Shiva call. I wanted to go and in some way sit with them during that week. I knew some of the family, Daniela Weiss, and in some way try and, if I could, in any small way, at least nurture them through that week. And people said to me at the time, I have 7 children at the time they were young, they said, that's not something you should do. You shouldn't go on the roads. You have young children. That's a dangerous thing to do. And I realized that they're right, and that maybe it's irresponsible of me to do this, but I'm going to trust in the IDF that was watching out on the roads, and I also am not going to let the terrorists win. The terrorists win when they intimidate you, when they make you afraid to do things. Amalek, the only nation that says in the Bible that we have to eradicate completely, they were terrorists. They came and they attacked the weak and the helpless. And so we've been told that we have to fight terrorism, and I decided this is my fight against terrorism. I'm not in the army. My children have all served in the army. I'm not. But I am not going to let them not only kill people that I know, but also prevent me from going to visit the people that remain and in some way try and help them. So I got on the road. I drove all the way to Elon Moreh from my home in Efrat. Didn't see anybody else on the road that day except for Army. I have to say that my right leg was shaking the entire time that I got up there to realize also I was there, but I still had to get home. But I sat with the family for a while, and I came home. Thank God I came home safely, and almost everybody who drives on the roads in Yudav Shomron does get home safely. Let's also keep a sense of proportion. But for me, that was a watershed moment in realizing that if the terrorists were going to beat me, in my mind, the psychological aspect, it was only going to be if I let them. Natan Sharansky writes about this extensively in his book, Fear No Evil. When even at the very end, when he's been let out of the gulag and he's up against the Soviet Union, and they send him to freedom across the bridge, and they say, walk straight across the bridge, he zigzags, all right? Because at some point within yourself, you have to say, you will not beat me, you will not break me. So that's what happened that day with the Gavishes. And, you know, as a guide, one of my favorite places to take people is in Jerusalem, to the city of David and to the southern excavations. And there what we see are the uncovered stones from the Second Temple. And the stones that go up next to each other, they're very flush. But as they go up levels, one level is a little bit behind the other level. The stones are not straight. The wall is not straight. It's not an accident. They knew very well what they were doing. What they were doing is breaking an optical illusion. There's an illusion when you're standing in front of a very tall wall that it's going to fall on you. Now, we were country bumpkins in the days of the temple, right? Most people lived on farms, were shepherds. We're finally getting to Jerusalem, and the importance of Jerusalem cannot in any way be exaggerated. One people, one place, together, one God, to worship one God. And we get there, and suddenly we're faced with a building, the temple, that's tens of meters tall. And the first reaction that people might have is to be afraid and to run away because they're going to feel like it's going to fall on them. And so by stepping the stones a little bit backwards, that's how you break that illusion and you break that fear. And then we went into the temple and we heard music and there was beautiful incense. And we were beset with a sense of awe and of grandeur. Ironically, the only way you might get a little inkling of it now is if you're watching, say, a royal wedding or if you're going into a Catholic church, right, where there's that sense of wow, that overpowering wow that works on all your senses and makes you feel a part of something so much greater than you are on your own. That's awe. The temple was an example of taking a situation that could have filled people with fear and instead filled them with awe. So we did that in the olden days, and really, that's something that we need to get. When we talk the yearnings to get that back, that's what we want to get back, that sense of purpose, that sense of togetherness, that sense of no fear, but tremendous love and tremendous awe. When I was in Costa Rica, some of the places that we went to at the time that I was there, we heard there were certain songs that we heard. When I pray in the mornings now, I pray to those songs. I incorporated those songs into my prayers because it sends me back on an emotional level to a place where I just knew that it was going to be okay, where I connected with my Creator, where I was overwhelmed with gratitude for what He has given me, for what He expects from me. The difficult things as well as the easier things, the difficult things means that He has faith in me to get out of my own way, to expand my comfort zone, and to be more than I ever thought that I could be. And so by putting those into my prayers now, it sends me back into that place where I remember that, which is what prayer is supposed to be. We live in a difficult world, and we also have so much information out there. It's hard to know. It's hard really to sift through the wheat and the chaff. It occurred to me a few months ago, the temple was built on a threshing floor. It says very clearly in the Bible that it was a threshing floor. And I thought, wow, because we're supposed to separate between the wheat and the chaff. We're supposed to know what's real and what needs to be thrown away. And I think these days, especially with so much misinformation and fake news around, it behooves all of us to hear that message and hear it very strongly, both on a national level, what we can do for our people, for the good people in the world to make a difference, to make sure that the bad guys and the evil ones don't get their way, but also on a very personal level. And for me, living in Israel, it has expanded my world, both the privilege that I have in being able to go around the world and talk about my people, talk about the role that we have in this world today, talk about the modern day state of Israel and the tremendous asset that it is to all of mankind. So on the one hand, I'm privileged to do that. And on the other hand, I'm privileged to incorporate that into my own personal life, to understand where my strengths lie, to understand where my weaknesses are, to be working on my weaknesses all the time, to understand what I can't change, because there are some things that I can't change, but there are some things that I can. And to do that all the time, to not be afraid, to be grateful all the time, and to be filled with a sense of awe, to realize what an awesome time I'm living in. Awesome, not awful. For the people who try and make me feel awful, to tell myself, no, I'm not awful. I am awesome. We are awesome. And all of us have within ourselves the ability to differentiate on that spectrum of fear and of awe, to make yir'ah be awe and not be afraid. And so I hope that some of the experiences that I've had in my life, both here in Israel, where, as we say, it's a local call, and also far away, because the world and all of humanity are those of the Creator. We all have different roles that we have to play, but we're all in this together. But if you give into the fear, or if you don't do anything against the bad, then the fear and the evil will take over. And so we have that responsibility within ourselves to make it more awesome every single day. Thank you.